Meeting, we're going to be short on time. You see a sign-up sheet up here in the front where we got a couple people standing. I'm going to need some order in the back of the room, please. Thank you very much. If you can close that back door for us, we appreciate it. If everyone could take their seats, we're going to go ahead and get started. If I could ask our very own Senator Reverend Kim Jackson to open us up in a word of prayer, I'd appreciate it.
Let us pray. Holy God, we thank you for the opportunity to gather with one another to discuss how we might care well, how we might keep our public safe. We ask that you would give us wisdom and help guide us as we seek to make good decisions. And we pray for all men and women, all people who are in uniform, who are serving to protect and to care for us. We ask that you would bless them and bless their families. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started with House Bill 167. For our committee members here, you will find that we actually passed the language in the original House Bill 167 by Representative Momtahan in a different bill. And what you have in front of you, we'll make sure it has the right LC number, is LC 393899S. And this pertains to a couple of things. Our Vice Chairman, Senator Robertson, who's actually presenting a bill in a House committee right now, you should be familiar with this business, or this piece of legislation, rather. Beginning on line 16, says a stun gun or taser lawfully possessed by a peace officer shall not be considered a firearm under this code section. Pretty straightforward. It is not a firearm. And then it repeats that again in Section 2 for a different designation of the code. Again, it says on line 24 to 25, such term shall not include any stun gun or taser as such term is defined in Code Section 1611-106. That's the first two sections of the bill. And then in Section 3, this is a little bit different. This is relating to our officers at GPSTC, the Georgia Public Safety Training Center in Forsyth, Georgia, who are post-certified police officers who do get called up to help out throughout the state as well as different academies, and this allows them to operate outside of just the walls of GPSTC, as any other state law enforcement would. And that will take you through the next section, just laying out and codifying its pretty straightforward language. So this is a very straightforward bill. I believe some information we have seen in the past. Are there questions from the committee members? I've got a question from Senator Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just seeing this for the first time, so please pardon me if this is already clear. But Section 1, is this in relationship to a crime being committed?
No, this is just defining it in the code to begin with. But in general, if you look at the beginning part of Section 1, in that code section, the code section refers to everything: possession of firearm, knife, commission or attempt to certain crimes. Adding a new subsection just says that if somebody has a taser, it's not considered a firearm. There's been confusion in the code of what is a taser, right? And a taser is not a gun. So. Okay.
May I have another follow-up?
Sure.
So normally when we are defining things, we define what they are, not what they are not. So is there a reason why we don't define it by what it is?
That's a great question, Senator. We don't define everything in the code. However, we've had some folks who have misunderstood what a taser is, because when you do that, you pull a trigger and it shoots out electric probes. They think that is a gun, but in fact it is not, and the same thing is true if they use like bean bags, et cetera. That's not a firearm, and to make sure we delineate the two for what they are. We've had some confusion in the courts before, and we're just creating clarity.
But are we defining what a taser is?
We are not defining it in this bill. We're just saying that it's not a firearm.
Okay.
All right. Did you have a comment?
I'm just making sure that.
What microphone are you?
4, please.
All right.
I understand.
Okay.
All right, good. Other questions from the committee members? Would you go grab the sign-up sheet real quick? Anybody here signed up to speak for or against House Bill 167? All right, we're getting a sign-up sheet right now. And I do want to let everyone know that we are getting kicked out of here at 1:59, so it's going to be a quick meeting today. So thank you. All right, let's see here. Okay, nobody is signed up for this. Oh, I see it now. 2 minutes, please.
Yes, sir. So I haven't looked at the sub. I'm guessing that you're amending 1611-106. That is the code section that deals with possession of a firearm or knife during the commission or attempt to commit certain crimes. So there actually is, to Senator Jackson's point, this is during the commission of a crime. So by making the change that I think you're proposing to make, you're allowing a police officer to commit a crime and it not to be a crime to have a stun gun or taser. We don't think that that's a good way to prosecute crimes. We think that police officers should be held to the same standard when they're committing a crime as the individual person. I'm looking at what I'm looking at is Senator Robertson's bill, Senate Bill 219, which I think this is based on, and it says that the term stun gun or taser is defined in 1611-106. However, it's not defined there. Happy to stand for any questions.
Strike it. Or just add on F.
Mr. Higbee, can we get your quick assistance? Yeah, go ahead. Just go to him real quick if you don't mind. Joey, appreciate your feedback, but I don't believe that's what it's saying at all. What it's reading very specifically is relating to the possession of a firearm or knife during the commission or attempt of certain crimes by adding a new subsection that says a stun gun or taser lawfully possessed by a police officer is not considered a firearm. It doesn't say that it's not a crime. It says that it's not a firearm. It's very simple.
Does it say under this code section at the end, Mr. Chairman?
Under this code section, that's right.
So under this code section, which deals with the possession of a firearm during the commission of a crime, you're excluding police officers from prosecution for tasers and stun guns by use of under the firearms.
That's not accurate. It's saying that those two things are not considered a firearm, period. It has nothing to do with the crime.
If it still says under this code section,
Okay, Jill.
I beg to differ,
Jill, I appreciate that, but I'm not going to argue with you.
and I'm not either.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to get some quick reference from Legislative Counsel. Hold one moment, and then we are going to continue to move on. Yes, Senator C. 11.
Help me understand, you know I'm a little slow.
Well, I don't believe that for a moment, Senator.
But my question, though, is by a peace officer, right? And so if the reverse is taking place, is it then just carve out for peace officers? I mean, I'm trying to understand.
If you look at
I
Section
mean,
2.
the taser is still the same
If
object.
if
Okay,
you,
go
if you
ahead.
look, I think if you look at Section 2, under line 24, right? This is in relation to 1611-171, relative Brady Law regulations. It defines what a firearm is and says such term shall not include stun gun or taser as such term is defined in 1611-106.
So we are contradicting what we're saying above then in line 16.
No, I think it's saying the exact same thing.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think number 4, if we're going to go around this rabbit hole like this, you could change possessed into lawfully used and avoid all.
We're talking about line 16?
Yeah, what she's saying, and it's not the intent at all, but she's saying now you've got this rogue band of police officers going out shooting people with stun guns to commit a crime. This would technically allow them to escape punishment under this thing, where if you said a stun gun or taser lawfully used by a peace officer. Okay, well, all your help up here. Come on.
Jenna, I see that you're here, and I think you're more familiar with this bill than Mr. Higbee is. Have you had a chance to review that language by chance, or are you just getting caught up?
The question of.
What they're saying is technically that a police officer
let's let them get a clarification first.
I think this is enhanced penalty, correct? All right, you have to give me a second to catch up.
Okay.
We're going to suspend for just a second here.
So this whole code section, 1611-106, talks about if you're holding a firearm during the commission of a crime, we're basically saying a stun gun or taser when you're lawfully a police officer, if you're committing that crime, it's not considered a crime when you're using it in your role as a peace officer. So you would not be able to be charged with that code section, a violation of that code section.
I see what you're saying now.
Okay.
Does that, I think that answered the question?
Was,
What's the problem?
it can't be lawfully possessed if it's being used in a crime. That would be illegally.
But those are things that you make a determination after.
Okay, all right, hang on. We're gonna, okay, if somebody wants to talk, we'll ask to be identified, and then we will get people one at a time to ask questions. Do you have anything else to say, Senator Dugan?
Not at this point, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Would you like to be recognized, Senator Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, and I've dealt with this bill before. Those are the things that would have to be determined after you go to court, whether it was lawfully used or not. That's a legal concept of being lawfully used. Obviously, it's being lawfully used, and it can't be charged with the crime. You wouldn't even need that language. But the key thing is, this basically is saying, because you have the statute originally saying a stun gun is a firearm. Now you're taking that out. So if something did happen by using a stun gun, you couldn't charge them with possession of a firearm during the commission of a crime. You just couldn't, because it's not a firearm.
I think that's an accurate statement. A stun gun or a taser is not a firearm.
But we're actually changing law. Why would we do that?
I think we're doing it to make sure we don't have any of our finest in law enforcement to be charged with something that doesn't make sense and say that they were using a firearm when they were not. I think more people would want to have less lethal use of force than more lethal use of force.
But it's being charged as a person who used a firearm during the commission of a crime. Right. So if you say that's not a firearm, then a police officer could not commit a crime if he uses a stun gun or a taser. He could legally not be in
lawfully
possession of a
possessed.
firearm.
I think we're saying lawfully possessed, though. If it was not lawfully possessed, then it would be illegal, and then it wouldn't be an issue anyway. I think we're saying the same thing. Or they get
No,
two
we're
ships
not.
across the line. Well, all right. Well, we're all entitled to our opinions here, right? Go ahead, Senator Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just want to revisit this first section once again. So the code that we are adding to, it begins with code section A. We don't have that printed here, but it defines a firearm. It says the term firearm shall include stun guns and tasers. So if we adopt F, what that will mean is that anybody who's not a peace officer who has a stun gun, that will be considered a firearm for them. But if they are a police officer, then we won't consider it a firearm.
Have you looked at Section 2, Senator?
That's a different code section. 1611-106 starts with, for the purpose of this code section, which is the one we're modifying in Section A, in Section 1, it says that it shall include stun guns and tasers, which means that for everybody else, anybody else who has a stun gun or who is in reach of a stun gun, they will be charged with having a firearm, but peace officers, police officers, right, would be exempt from this. I just want to be clear that that's what we're doing. We're saying that if I have a stun gun, it's a gun. But if a law enforcement officer has a stun gun, then it's not a gun. That's what we're saying.
Only in a commission of a crime.
That's when you use it.
Well, no, I would hope that you wouldn't be using a commission of a crime. You might want to use one as self-defense. All right, any other questions? Jenna, anything else you want to add to the conversation here? All right. All right. Got a motion due pass from Senator Goodman. Do I have a second? Second from Senator Payne. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. All opposed? 1, 2, 3. Passes 4-3. Thank you. And Senator Robertson will be carrying that one on the Senate floor, should it make it through the Rules Committee. All right, next up, we have got Senate Bill 119. This is also a substitute bill from the original. Senator, if you wouldn't mind going to the podium just so all the millions of listeners and watchers can see you live streamed. House Bill 119 is now LC 393892S. Again, this bill was combined through Representative Corbett into two bills, if you'll remember, for passing folks both on the interstate as well as mail trucks. So we combined those two bills, and this is now in relation to booting. So Senator McLaurin, I will turn it over to you. I do want to remind both you and everybody in the audience that we have 14 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try and be as quick as possible. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing us to use this bill to address the important topic of booting cars in Georgia. I'll start with a public policy statement. The goal that we all have, that we all agree about, is to free up legitimate parking for the invitees of property owners. We want that to be safe and easy and straightforward, and we want enforcement to be low cost and to work for everybody involved. The problem is that booting is not the answer to that. And you have major metro areas around the country that ban it for reasons I'll discuss in just a second, because it's not the best form of parking enforcement, and it often creates a lot more what we call negative externalities, problems, than it solves. The answer, which I'll straight up jump out with, is controlled access, and yes, in some extreme cases, towing. The reason that controlled access works is because it doesn't let you get on the property in the first place. If you got a gate, you get a ticket, you go get it validated at the business where you shop, and then you get back in your car and you leave. You don't get your car in there improperly in the first place. And then towing, of course, if you're sure, if the property owner designates that a car should be removed, that car is removed at some cost to the owner and at some cost to the driver. But that's only used in cases where the property owner knows through verification that a car doesn't belong. The problem with booting is that the industry has gotten out of hand. There have been attempts to regulate it in the past that the industry has resisted. Obviously, there are many representatives from the industry today, but the basic business model of booting requires volume and it requires a lack of regulation. If we were to regulate this industry the same way that we regulate towing in this state as we have in the last 15 years for towing, I submit to you that the business model will not be profitable enough to run. And that is why booters are here to say, let's do a study committee. Let's kick the can a little bit so we can figure out what the compromise position is. I submit to you that economically, there probably is no compromise position. And if that's the will of the committee to talk about that, we can. But let me discuss very briefly some of the drawbacks. Booting may cost $75 if you're in a municipality that has an ordinance that sets it there. But if you're in unincorporated DeKalb County, for example, the booting fine could be $500, where there is no ordinance regulating it. The Supreme Court of Georgia said that there is no common law that authorizes booting. There is no tradition, history that allows that as legal activity. So you've got to have municipalities make it legal activity for it to even be allowed in the first place. And essentially the way you do that is you set a bunch of ordinances, signs have to be posted in certain places, whatever. Problem is there's no way to enforce those ordinances. Booting companies routinely, and I've got lawyers here today from the Weatherington Law Firm, lawyers who will lose money if you pass this bill because they've handled booting cases for years. But the reason they're here today is because sometimes you see something so predatory that it doesn't matter if it's in your interest to go advocate against it or not. Right? And so in this case, the lawyers are here to tell you, if you need evidence or testimony about the voluminous cases. They get calls, pretty much every day. They've never got a call for towing. They haven't gotten a call from, certain lots that I think some members of the committee are concerned about. But what they have gotten calls for are people who get boots on their cars after they validly paid the fine. They get calls because a car tire might be on the line, so that's a technical violation. They might get calls because somebody put a boot on for no reason whatsoever. I've heard stories even today about buying 12 hours worth of parking and the boot goes on anyway, okay? Because they know at the end of the day, it's low cost or no cost for them to do it, and it's your problem that you have to go figure out. You have to either bring the lawsuit or you've got to file the complaint or go tell the city, and that's just too much work for the average consumer, the average driver. So this industry continues to scoot along in this way. Let's talk really quickly about property rights. Like I said at the top of this, we all want to protect private property, but it's not the best way to do it. Here's one reason why. When you strand a car, it's stuck in a parking lot. Not only does that violate common sense because it's a trespass, so the booting just compounds the trespass, but it also creates safety problems. You've got confrontations between people who believe that they have been improperly booted and the booters. Oftentimes, the ordinances say they can't carry weapons, but they do. You can ask the people who get in these cases and litigate them. That has turned into shootings. It has turned into violence. It's actually safer in some cases for your car to actually get towed to another lot because you're not there waiting for the booters to show up. Again, ordinance will say maybe 30 minutes, 60 minutes that they're required to show up, but they don't show up in that amount of time because there's no enforcement for it. It has gotten out of hand. While the car is stuck wherever it's stuck, there could be break-ins, there could be physical assaults. I know of stories of people who are stuck with their small kids, they can't move their car. It would be much safer for them to get an Uber off-site. And it's just creating confrontation that shouldn't exist. That confrontation is why in other states and major metro areas, the violence that has resulted is why we've had those bans. I'll submit to you that those are the myriad policy problems and that the attempts in the past to compromise with booters have failed. In 2018, there was a compromise bill that would have regulated it the same way as towing. Booters showed up pre-session, ready, agreeing with House leadership that they were going to agree to that bill and then backed out because they don't want to be regulated because this industry depends on predatory practices and it's time for a statewide ban. That is what House Bill 119 now does. Is a total statewide ban on booting with a very modest cause of action that's for actual damages. If somebody actually immobilizes your vehicle, you get $100 minimum, and it just says you can't do it. Doesn't leave it up to the locals. It says we've had enough. Mr. Chairman, I would be happy to answer questions or offer 2 minutes to one of my witnesses to explain further if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator, isn't it true just a few years ago, my fire chief got booted a block from this Capitol building?
I have heard that story, and it's one of tens or hundreds of stories that since I've announced this legislation that have come in the door.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Questions for the bill's author? Seeing none, we've got some folks signed up to speak here. Now, I've got 2 people who did not fill out the form completely, and we're going to put it back out there for you to figure that out. First, Dean Poulos, if you could come up, and then we're going to put, I think that's maybe Dan on deck. I can't read that writing very well. And David and Michael, please fill out the rest of the form, please. Please, go ahead. You've got 1 minute. Go.
My name is Dean Poulos. I represent a parking lot that is in the metro area that is surrounded by 6 mid to high-rise condos, hotel, Whole Foods, and various other retail. We have an open lot. There's 7 access points. That would be an awful lot of equipment to have to buy and have to control people in and out and worry about some sort of validation system because people are allowed to use all these common area private roadways that are interconnected for interconnectivity and for access, and they're easements. We have fire lanes and handicap spots, and people that would love to park here all the time, to go to the hotel, go to the various restaurants, to go to these apartments. If we can't control them, our lot would be full. We'd have nothing for our retail or any way to control the lot in general. By far, booting seems to be the most humane way, if you want to use that term, because you come back to your vehicle, it's raining, it's hot, you sit in it, turn on the air, you wait a few minutes, they come. I think if it's an excessive amount of time, it'd probably be a good idea to pass something that says up to a certain point of time, a guaranteed time frame. You don't pay for that boot. They let you go and you win the lottery on the boot.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We got to keep going here. Michael Crusoe.
Hey guys, my name is Michael Caruso. I work for Cardinal Group. It's a big property management company. We have multiple properties in Atlanta, West Midtown, and downtown. And without booting, it would be impossible to enforce any of the policies on the property. We've had military-style gates installed on the property. They destroyed them. Can't keep them. $50,000 worth of gates gone. We've had towing on the property. Problem is, it's too evasive. When they get towed off property, now you have people, individuals, have to go to the tow yard, prove they own the vehicle, then it costs double the money to come back out. The booting seems to be the least evasive way for us to handle it. We try to regulate, we have paid parking on the property to try to control the amount of visitors that we have come there. The only way we control it is with the booting. It helps keep down a lot of the violence. The other good thing about the booters is that they're on property 24/7, in and out. So they're an extra set of eyes on our property that regulates some of the crime that happens. So they've called APD for us. They've called me directly. I
All
assume
right.
that's my time.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Okay, Dean Poulos, come on down, and, oh, Dean, I'm sorry. David, come on down.
Hello, and thank you for my minute. I'm David Fairbaugh. I have 35 years of parking management experience throughout the Southeast. I've used every method of enforcement available to parking operators everywhere, and they all have limitations. Gates, as was mentioned, can get destroyed, and they're kind of ugly. Tickets are mostly ignored. By putting a notice in the car, people throw them away. Towing is expensive, it's irreversible, and it's unreliable for me as an operator. I can't get the trucks when I need them. Booting is a visual deterrent. It's effective, it's reversible. At the end of the day, it's safer for the parkers. You can sit in your car and wait for the booter to come. You can remove the boot, and you never have contact with them. But to me, this is a property rights issue. Not allowing booting is an option for parking owners and operators who are invested in this community. In my experience, this takes away their most effective method of enforcing parking, and it encourages the bad behavior. So I hope you'll keep that in mind when you consider this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for sticking to the time. Okay, I don't know if this is Dan or Da from Effective Parking, or? Yes, that looks like it. Should have been a doctor, Dan.
Sorry. Thank you for my time. I will say that this, found out about this meeting like 45 minutes ago before the meeting and came here rushed. And I think this is something that needs more time to talk about. I do agree that it's a big issue, but I operate parking in the Buckhead area pretty much exclusively. We have retailers that pay a lot of money for their 35 parking spots. We have a gymnasium next door that just during a class period, 35 people come. They took up all the parking for that hour, hour and a half. There is no way to get those people towed or this and that. We reached out 6 or 7 times to get them to stop doing this activity. It wasn't until we started demobilizing a few vehicles that they actually took it seriously, and the activity has stopped. So it is a very viable, safe option. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Next up, Jacob, AAA. And just to get on deck next, we're going to have Robert and Matt to finish us up.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Jacob Hughes with AAA Parking. I just want to say to the senators, thank you for letting me speak. On December 14, 2021, the Georgia Supreme Court made the following determination on RCC Wesley Chapel Crossing, LLC versus Forrest Allen. The defendants cannot immobilize vehicles or demand a fee to remove a vehicle immobilization device absent an enabling statute. There is no enabling statute or ordinance at the location where a plaintiff and all other class members were booted. The ruling allows booting only in municipals that have an ordinance regulating the practice during the oral comments. The court stated that local jurisdictions, city council, are the entities that they should regulate booting. Thank you.
Thank you for that good information. Okay, next, Robert, come on down.
Do you mind if I go? We can let him clean up.
That's fine. Go ahead, Matt.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Weatherington. I'm with the Weatherington Law Firm. You're probably, no one cares about my personal opinion, and I respect that, so I'm just going to give you some data. I'm one of the attorneys that's pursued class action lawsuits against the booting companies, and you've got a very serious problem on your hands, and there are no clean, easy solutions. What I can tell you is that we have publicly available numbers. We have helped over 100,000 people in Georgia who have been unlawfully booted so far. And I have received just in the last 3 months over 190 inquiries from individuals who claim that they were also unlawfully booted. I would submit to you that booting is a moneymaker, but not an actual solution for anything. It doesn't work. You're not going to hear reports of the number of people who park improperly going down because of booting. People are just going to park where they want to park, and if you want to actually solve the trespass, you just have to tow them. There are no high rises or anything that can't have tow trucks there. Everyone can get a vehicle out of a high rise or a parking lot or anything like that. There's nothing stopping them. So, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And last up, Robert, come on down.
Good afternoon. I'm Matt Wetherington's associate, and as he said, we've been involved in litigation with the booting companies and the property owners that hire booting companies for the better part of 5 or 6 years. We have sued every single booting company in the state of Georgia, as far as I know. None of them were ever in compliance with anything. Regulating them has not worked. Otherwise, my lawsuits just wouldn't exist. Second, there seems to be a concern about property, and I get it. I understand you want to protect your property, and a lot of these people that came up here today to talk about their property, they don't seem to understand that these booting lawsuits don't just affect booting companies. They affect the property owners that hire the booting companies. That R.C. Wesley Chapel case that went to the Supreme Court, there's no booting company as a defendant in that case. That's my case. That's against a property owner that hired a booting company that was acting illegally, that now has to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars because of the actions of the booting company. Like, this is a mistake. Like, do what you want, and if you think you need booting to protect your property, just know the people that you're using to protect your property are not following the law, not following the ordinance, and eventually you're gonna get hit by it, and either me or somebody else is gonna sue you for hiring these people, and you will be sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think I got everybody on the list. Why don't you come back up to the podium, if you would, Senator? Questions from the committee members to the bill's author. Question from Senator Goodman. Oh, there you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've just got a quick question. When I was first elected, I came up here from South Georgia, parked in the parking lot next to the ag building. I paid for 12 hours of parking. All right. I go and I leave and I'm gone for like 15 minutes, and I come back, and I come over here to the Capitol. I'm trying to get, don't know what in the world I'm doing. I go back and my truck's booted, even though I'd paid for 12 hours. And I asked them, I said, what, I showed them the ticket where I'd paid for 12 hours, and they said, well, it doesn't matter if you pay for 12 hours. If you leave and come back, then it's voided, And so, is that, I've experienced some of this personally, so I'm just, is that a common practice in Atlanta as far as, because it seems to me if I paid for 12 hours or something, then I paid for 12 hours of it. And when you talk about personal property rights, my truck is my property.
Senator, I think what you're getting at is that there are multiple liberty interests at stake here. There's safety interests, liberty interests. It's not just on one side. And there are things that private property owners can do. I think we've fallen into this trap or addiction with booting. Think about this. Booting companies aren't subject to the towing regulation where you get kickbacks or commissions based on what you get from the boot, right? So there are financial incentives to stay in this trap. And I think that's why we get elected, is to see the problem, to overcome the problem, and to put in place a new framework that allows us to come up with better ideas.
Other questions? Senator Jackson.
So I just want to go back to this whole booting versus towing situation. One of the gentlemen testified and said that any high rise can get a tow truck in there. In a city like Atlanta where booting has some constraints, it's $75 for a boot. How much more is it for a tow? And how much do you have to pay to get to the tow company? Like, I'm just trying to figure out what's the least punitive thing that we can do to a person who has violated where they're supposed to park. And to me, it seems like booting is a whole lot less punitive than tow. But please respond
With
to
respect,
that.
Senator, not if you're an unincorporated DeKalb County paying $500 for a boot. I mean, in places where there are actual regulation holes, towing, because it's regulated, probably will be cheaper in those cases. Now, with the municipal ordinance, $75 cap, whatever an ordinance might say, that might be the only part of that ordinance that's effectively enforceable, because the rest of it has to do with you'd have to have somebody on the property monitoring it. So I think part of the issue is I get that there are aesthetic concerns, cost concerns with the controlled access, with the availability of towing, but what we are asking right now is for Georgia's consumers and drivers to bear all the costs of this runaway industry, not only the time and the money, but the safety concerns too. 911 time gets, I've seen personally cops respond to a booting confrontation. That is time that they could be using to enforce the laws, to protect public safety elsewhere in other contexts. It is a drain on our resources, it is a tax on our drivers, and I think that the other alternatives are not perfect, but they are better than this, and that is my contention, Senator. Thank you.
All right, other questions for the bill's author? I see you're pulling your mask off, Senator C. Is that a question?
No, I don't. I was just going to say, let's do pass it.
All right. I do have a motion do pass from Senator C. Do I have a second? Second from Senator Payne. Any further discussion of the committee members? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. All opposed? 1, 2, 3. That passes. Best wishes and rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, that's all the business before the Public Safety Committee today. Thank you for your time. This meeting is hereby adjourned.